Trump for being responsible for the overturning of Roe.
The former president handpicked 3 Supreme Court justices because he intended for them to overturn Roe. He intended for them to
What
take
a lie.
your freedoms.
The push marks the campaign's
It was wrong to begin with.
to emphasize the abortion issue. A judge on Monday ordered court records of the divorce proceedings of a special prosecutor, Nathan Wade, who is handling the Georgia election interference case against the former President Donald Trump, be made public. The court will also decide on whether Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis will be deposed. A motion filed last week by Trump's defense attorney in the election case alleges
all along, just recently on Friday, and as we look back on that march, there's also the focus of looking on. As I mentioned, it's an important matter all year long. Abby Johnson joins us now. The interesting thing about Abby is that she is a former Planned Parenthood director who now heads up the only ministry in the country that helps abortion workers leave their jobs and find new, life-affirming ones. And Abby's also the founder of Pro-Love Ministries, a network of ministries to help fill gaps in the pro-life movement. Abby, thank you for joining us this hour. And I've got to ask you, you once worked as a Planned Parenthood member. What was that experience like, and what caused you to have the transition over to helping people keep their babies?
Sure. So thank you so much for having me. You know, I got to work for Planned Parenthood. I started working for them as a college student, not really knowing much about abortion either way, but got involved believing that I was really helping women and kind of believing that Planned Parenthood lie, that Planned Parenthood is here to help women, particularly low-income women. And so got involved as a college kid and just started rising up the ranks. And I've been there for quite some time and was called in to assist with an ultrasound-guided abortion procedure. I am not a doctor or medically credentialed, actually, in any way, but was called in to assist as the director. And that was the first time I'd actually ever seen an abortion in real time in that way. And I watched as a 13-week-old baby fought and struggled for his life. And I knew then that there was life in the womb, there was humanity in the womb, and I knew that if those two things were true, then I knew I was on the wrong side of this abortion debate. So I ended up leaving, and ever since then, I've been really trying to not only expose the horrors of abortion, but also trying to bring healing to those who have been affected by abortion in one way or another.
Wow, Abby, it's actually a remarkable experience that you went through to realize that a child in the womb was actually fighting for life. The American public, as you know, with the Supreme Court decision and the reversal of Roe versus Wade, the American.
You know, I believe it is us. I believe it is those of us who line up and say that we are here not believing that the rights of the child in the womb supersede the rights of the mother. We are here in the pro-life movement to say that the woman and her preborn child have equal dignity. They have equal worth. And what you'll find in the abortion movement is that they are out here saying that the rights of the woman supersede the rights of the child. And we're just trying to bring some balance back by saying, look, we want to support women and their children. We are the ones opening maternity homes, pregnancy care centers, support lines, case management hotlines, programs. We're the ones that are providing that support. You'll never walk into an abortion center and see stacks of diapers or referrals from maternity centers. They provide one option for women who are in crisis, and that is to kill their child. And that is not real help, and it is certainly not health care. Abortion facilities are located in most super minority neighborhoods. That means that over 85% of the population in those neighborhoods are minority populations. That should tell you all you need to know about Planned Parenthood and their goals for the minority communities.
You know, you make such an incredible statement about something that everyone should know, and yet so few do, particularly those in predominantly minority communities, low-income communities, where they see a Planned Parenthood sign and they believe they're going in there to get services that will help them. Now, to be fair, Planned Parenthood does provide some counseling before pregnancy even takes place, like you said, contraception, things of that nature, and some other needs. But the bottom line is how it was founded by Margaret Sanger, and just her diabolical view of African Americans and other minorities throughout this country. It's just stunning to me that Planned Parenthood has continued to actually try to hide that moment. Your message to America from a pro, but as it's Planned Parenthood and understands the value of humanity in the womb and outside of the color of message.
You know, I think we're at a really critical time in America right now where we need to really get back to kind of basic education. And that starts really in the home with our own children. I am a mother of 8 children, 8 really beautiful blessings in my home, in my care. And, you know, in our family, we talk very, very bluntly about human life and the value of human life. But we're also very careful as parents to protect our children. We are the gatekeepers of our children's minds, their hearts, their souls. And so protecting our children from social media, outside have a cell phone with internet access in their bed as parents, right? But I am firmly believe their children will be because of it. So I think parents need to wake up. This is a wake-up call for parents and so as Christians, we need to be bold and pray. Their true, the truth for the community includes the gospel of life. That all life is valuable, not just life in the womb, but life outside the womb as well.
Thank you, Abby Johnson. We're coming back with more. Focus.
Or of the right of the people to peaceably assemble and petition the government for a redress of grievances. I mean, to me, the First Amendment is so applicable to January 6th. We haven't even begun to be told the full story, which means the truth about January 6th. You know, I remember hearing the mantra of thousands of armed insurrections. You know, which I'm the guy, by the way, in the hearing in February where we had FBI witness Jill Sanborn asked her, okay, we hear thousands of armed insurrections. So most Americans, when they think of arms, they think of firearms. And I know you can use other things as weapons, and they did. But most people think of arms as firearms. So I asked the FBI, how many firearms, if we had thousands of armed insurrections, how many firearms did the FBI confiscate on January 6th? I had no idea what the answer would be. But the answer was a mic drop moment when she said 0. I asked the FBI witness about how many armed insurrectionists, but I also entered in the first hearing the written testimony of J. Michael Wallen, who taught at War College, a very trained observer, went to January 6th to observe. wrote his 14-page testimony, observations, without ever looking at any news media. I entered that into the record in our first dual committee hearing. I was immediately called and attacked by Senator Klobuchar as being a conspiracy theorist and having entered a conspiracy theory into the record. Well, that testimony by J. Michael Waller has pretty well stood the test of time. He talked about, first of all, no police presence at all on the west side of the Capitol. None that he could see. He talked about 4 distinct groups, and he called them provocateurs. I would call them agitators. I think what you're going to see here in the video that Joe Hanneman has provided in this documentary, that is a pretty good description. There were people at the front, didn't attend the speech at the
You
the
did
ellipse.
such a
They were
great
there. They were there
job
to agitate, to create violence.
fucking up this
That's the
country.
truth. We need to know more truth about January 6th. I just have to thank Epic Times for being those journalists that are utilizing our First Amendment right to freedom of the press, freedom of speech, being the honest broker in terms of trying to expose and tell the American people the truth. And all I can ask of anybody here in the audience or listening in a later videotape is please try and find out what the truth is. Discern it. You know, look up sites like Epic Times. Subscribe. You know, learn.
Her, and she was satisfied with that answer. But I think the heavy use of SWAT, and in so many cases, appears to be designed to frighten and intimidate. We just profiled a Minnesota family that was swatted twice. In the second, 60 agents, they actually were flying drones into the chicken coop. Although I understand no chickens were apprehended, but it's just the lengths that this has gone to. And even though there's more and more publicity on this, it's not slowing down. And in fact, if anything, the more it's exposed, the worse it gets.
So I'm going to start by asking a question to each and everyone on the panel, then we'll make it a little bit more of a free-for-all, whoever wants to jump in to answer. But to Tom, so there's this theme that emerges here, right? And one of them is, the First Amendment feels like it's being, I'll just say endangered, okay? And what is your take on how the FBI is dealing with the First Amendment right now?
Well, first of all, I want to say thank you to Joe and to Epoch Times because you are like literally the champions of this and getting the message of this out. I think it's really we appreciate what you're doing. It is a direct assault against the First Amendment. It is literally a direct assault against the First Amendment. The FBI, as was shown in the documentary, the FBI knows that it cannot arrest people for their thoughts. They want to. They want to be able to arrest you for thinking things or saying things. But they can't because of that pesky thing. And literally I heard this from FBI, agents and senior agents. Because of that pesky thing called the Constitution and the First Amendment, it stands in the way of them saving us. It is literally a direct assault to say that we need a federal domestic terrorism statute in Congress. That is what they are asking for. Because with that, then they can literally surveil anyone in the country they want at any time to try and prevent someone from committing a crime. That would be literally the absolute destruction of the U.S. Constitution if they were to get a federal domestic terrorism statute that would allow them to circumvent the entire Constitution. Not just the First Amendment, but they would be able to use it against everything. So it's a direct attack against our Constitution.
So, Mike, of course, I could ask you, what you think about this as well, but why don't I maybe defer that for a moment and just simply, there's been considerable investigation that's been done by Congress into this whole issue, right? I mean, we've seen it on TV. Some huge amounts of money were put into it. How would you grade Congress's investigation into understanding what really happened on January 6th?
Not very well. Pass, fail across the board. But let me back up and say thanks for having me, Joe. That is an awesome documentary. Everyone should watch it. Going into this Congress, there is so much talk about what they had done the previous Congress, and the extent of a massive, never-seen-before type of committee, which was the January 6th committee, complete with TV producers on staff, witnesses that were now discovering they had flipped and changed their tune, working with the Department of Justice along the way, capturing the media narrative for years, and a lot of perjury along the way, from my estimation. So that was the attitude going in when Republicans took the House and flipped it. That did not happen. People were promised that it would, but nothing close to approaching it has happened yet. And what we've seen since is a lot of patriots, including you guys in this documentary, steps into that void and are actually answering questions for the American people.
Sarah, thank you for joining the panel at the last minute. And of course, your husband, Roland, or Holt, has been behind bars since August of 21. And, you mentioned in the documentary when you first tried to see him, you weren't even allowed to. What does that look like now? And, basically, what is the state of affairs with him?
Yeah, so thank you, Epic Times and Joe. He's done a wonderful job of covering my husband's case and a lot of January 6th defendants' cases, just looking at the facts of it. My husband is still behind bars here in Washington, D.C. October 11th of 2023, he was found guilty in front of a jury of not his peers. And he's going to be sentenced February 29th. It's a everyday thing of getting up, saying, how am I going to get out of bed today and have the strength to get through today? It was a year and a half before I laid eyes on my husband again after being apprehended by the FBI. And it was just legal things along the way that, you're in this fight for their life because of January 6th, but then you have all these little battles that you have to fight along the way. And it's only because of the general public putting pressure on congressional members and the Epic Times and media outlets like that to get this video evidence out, because within, 5 minutes of his first bond hearing, the government had withheld exculpatory evidence. And that's a violation of our constitutional rights, but it doesn't seem to matter here in Washington, D.C. And so, this fight is far from over, but I do feel like the tide is turning, because now this video evidence is coming out proving that what the Mockingbird media has put out as an insurrection, it absolutely wasn't an insurrection. And we have always had the truth on our side. I've never once heard a January 6th defendant act like a victim. But they are the victims in this, but we have to of what is happening.
So many questions, but the big question in my mind is, we've seen this change. It seems like a change, but it's almost like we've forgotten that things worked differently back in the day, both in the FBI and in the Justice Department in general. I think, for example, you one of the shocking things in the film for me was when you say there was nothing like a SWAT team or a perp walk for a misdemeanor. That's just crazy. I mean, I'm paraphrasing here a little bit. And then there's also this sort of, in the Justice Department, very creative use of, let's call it creative use of, legal statutes, some of which has been used in, hundreds of years to get what seems to be a desired result. So if you could just kind of speak to that shift.
In my experience, I joined the Department of Justice in July of 1992 and left in May of 2013. In my experience, not only in the cases I handled, but in all of the cases I knew about, in the 2 offices I worked, we never asked for an arrest warrant in a misdemeanor case. You didn't ask. You sent people summons. Send them something in the mail, tell them what day they're supposed to come to court. And, oftentimes, in that kind of circumstance, you'd already made some communication with the defendant that they had a lawyer, and the penal summons would often just go to the lawyer. That was ordinary business. When I began to see in these cases, FBI was using tactical units to make dynamic entries for misdemeanor and felonies. He owns his felony. It's not audit. A felony arrest requires a dynamic entry. That's generally reserved for defendants who are thought to either likely to flee or that there's a risk that they will not come peaceably. So much has changed since I left. I mean, it was 10 and a half years ago that I left. It doesn't seem like that long ago. Doing these cases, 26 months now, had many opportunities to discuss with former colleagues of mine, people my age, who've also left the department and gone on to other things, who are retired FBI agents. I mean, I count among circle friends several former FBI supervisors up to the level of SAC. They're all deeply troubled by what they see the Bureau doing now, which is so contrary to the way we did business in the 90s and 2000s, even into early 2010s. It's just different. And there are reasons why it's different. I'll actually mention also the question of the domestic terrorism law. You know why there's never been a need for domestic terrorism law and why it's always just sort of been brushed aside? Because existing statutes cover all of the crimes. You don't need it. You can prosecute domestic terrorists for violations of other statutes because they're doing things that are illegal. The domestic terrorism designation right now only exists in the FBI's coding of its cases. I think it's 260, we call it 265, is domestic terrorism. That is a stat designed to get the FBI more money. So that's at the base, that's all of it. It's all about getting more resources. The dynamic entries, the same thing. We need more SWAT teams because last year our dynamic entries were up 47% over the year before. These are all numerical metrics that the FBI evaluates all of their field officers in. And you know what those numerical metrics come to? This is so banal, it's ridiculous. Those numerical metrics end up bonuses and promotions for management. That's it. Right? That's at the heart of all of this. Bonuses and promotions for FBI management. The government in the last 3 months has ramped up the pace of arrests and new charges. There was about 8 months it seemed like it really slacked off, and I think that was because the court system was in effect saturated, couldn't take anymore. But then several hundred cases have been resolved, and starting back in about September, and I track this stuff pretty closely. I've got 40 clients, so I follow this stuff pretty closely. Starting in about September, we started to see 6, 8, 10 arrests a week. And that pace has been maintained all the way up through now. And I think the purpose is transparent. Matt Graves came out and said, we're gonna start arresting people who just were on the ground, even if they didn't go inside, even if they didn't engage with police. Those are now, that's what we're dipping into now. And the purpose is to continue to have charges, indictments, arrests, trials, guilty pleas, and sentencings from now through November continues. And to keep up this this picture for the electorate at large that this segment of the political opposition is really a criminal element and can't be tolerated or allowed back into power in D.C.
Well, I guess this is actually the end of our panel, and let's give them another big round of applause.
Stopped for staff and stuffed her car when unsuspectful as Highway 60 from Galleria Boulevard and proceeded to conduct a traffic stop. His release Roosevelt Police Department showed the suspect's car trunk and passenger seat stuffed with a variety of water bottles. The unnamed woman, 23 from Sacramento, was arrested for grand theft. Stanley's Quencher Cup, which holds 40 fluid ounces and is priced at $45, has gained massive popularity in recent months, driven by a trend fueled by social media. Christina Corona, NTD.
led to the uptick in crime.
They really went crazy about this whole defund the police and don't have police. But the majority of residents in Oakland, they pay taxes. As business owners, we demand our taxes be used for public safety.
Oakland auto theft has increased 44% in 2023 compared to 2022. The Shell gas station near the airport has gone viral for being a regular target for thieves. Car rental companies at the airport warn visitors to watch your belongings when getting gas there. Items. Using her lens, Board of Family successfully completed the task and delivered the surplus bags to locations like St. Benedict's Chapel, benefiting an estimated 200 people. Despite her shyness, Davani made friends while delivering the bags and is already planning to create summer goodie bags. Her motivation, she said, is rooted in the belief that everyone needs help sometimes. Despite Davani's reluctance, Rebby shared her story on social media, gathering appreciation